to liken Carney to an unreliable boyfriend. Unfortunately for the governor, that is a term that stuck with him.
There's been a lot of talk of Carney's record. Welcome back to Moose on Loose. My name's David. Today, we have a new video that is, well, it's an old video that is resurfaced of Mark Carney's record as the governor of the Bank of England. And it is a very telling story. We've also got the Conservatives blasting the Liberals in the House of Commons, saying what you and I are thinking. We got a bunch of other stuff here. Let's jump into this. Starting this episode off, we got Shrey Teese posting this new liaison strategies poll. 45% for the Liberals, 33% for the Conservatives. Really nothing moving here. We got this one here from the Food Professor. We are number one again. Unfortunately, that's not good because Canada sits on top of the food inflation pyramid among G7 countries. 4% food inflation. We've also got Kirk Lubomov posting this. February, 4.1%. Grocery prices increasing. And March, 4.4%. The prices of fresh vegetables are leading the cost drive with 7.8% increase. That's the largest increase since August of 2023. Mark Carney making life unaffordable for Canada. At a certain point, people will hit a breaking point where civil unrest and full-blown revolt will happen. People will stop paying taxes. His whole little plan here is going to completely implode when there's no money coming into the government coffers to roll them over to Brookfield and net zero companies. We got Ezra Levant commenting on this. So Chrystia Freeland said she's grateful to be in New York and honored to receive Heroes of Democracy Award. That's right, as Ezra Levant pointing out, getting award for democracy. She's the one who imposed martial law on Canada because peaceful truckers were honking their horns at you. That's right, the person who fully endorsed and helped implement the Emergencies Act on Canadians, which was deemed unlawful, is getting an award for democracy. Apparently their X account has been suspended. We've got Mark Carney announcing agreement with Luxembourg. Luxembourg is one of the greatest tax haven countries in the world, so I'm not surprised he's got something going on here. I'll keep you posted on this. And we've got Melissa posting this one. Ex-Mountie pleads not guilty to offense under Canada's Security of Information Act. The prosecution alleges Matcher actions in May and June 2017 were done for the benefit and the direction of the Chinese government. That's right. So we've got, as Melissa pointing out, a trial of a former Mountie kicks off in Vancouver where he's accused of acting as a mercenary for China, who later moved to Hong Kong. She says, I understand. Our country has been compromised by China. Moving ahead, I need to issue a correction here on this video. So this guy is a Liberal supporter, not a Liberal MP. He just happens to look like one of the Liberal MPs, but he is not. So just to clarify, I apologize. This guy is just a Liberal supporter who thinks Pierre Poilievre is a dictator and not a sitting MP. Moving ahead, we've got some old footage here that Ryan Garrettson posting here was absolutely scathing on Mark Carney's record as the Bank of England governor. They blow this up on this giant screen here. You can see this red section Mark Carney gets in here, and as time goes on, it goes down and down and down. Now, before I play this, just to break down what we're looking at, basically this is the price of one British pound as opposed to one American dollar. If it's up at $1.50, it'll take $1.50 American to buy one British pound. When Carney gets in, it's $1.60, and it goes up to $1.70 here. So it takes $1.70 US to buy one British pound. And watch what happens.
That's right. So let's take a look back at Carney's tenure, though, because he will be stepping down in March, handing over the reins to Angie Bailey, as was announced just a month ago. Let's start in July 2010, which is formally when Carney took over. Just a month later, the Bank of England introduced something called forward guidance, a bit of a break from his predecessor, Mervyn King there, saying that rates were going to be on hold for as long as the unemployment rate was above 7% and they didn't see signs of wage growth. Well, in subsequent months, the employment rate started dropping, unemployment rate started dropping, wage growth picked up, which prompted the Bank of England governor in June 2014 to give that very famous Mansion House speech saying that the first rate hike could happen sooner than markets currently expect. That came with a bit of a hawkish surprise to the markets, which also prompted a Treasury Select Committee member, the Labour MP Pat McFadden, to liken Carney to an unreliable boyfriend.
Wow. Before we go on here, earlier she mentions Carney with this forward guidance.
There's something called forward guidance, a bit of a break from his predecessor.
Well, Carney just used the same language just the other day in his speech. So in his speech here, he talks about his history as the governor of Bank of England.
Canada and the Bank of England. It was part of my duties to make regular public reports on what we were doing to manage the economy. And I remember during the financial crisis, when there was a real risk of panic, I developed a practice called forward guidance. It was designed to assure people that however difficult the situation seemed on any given day, that we were acting, and importantly, that we would continue to act with overwhelming force against our problems until they were solved.
Well, let's see how that worked out, because this clip here shows us exactly how this worked out.
The Labour MP Pat Pat McFadden to liken Carney to an unreliable boyfriend. Unfortunately for the governor, that is a term that stuck with him. And the reference there was that he was sometimes hot on the economy, sometimes cold on the economy, but clearly was guiding towards rate hikes. Well, the rate hike never actually materialized because, as we know, the country was gripped by discussions over what would happen on a Brexit. And indeed, in June 2016, we had that Brexit referendum. The Bank of England had previously put out multiple forecasts, a prognosis on what would happen to the economy were Brexit to materialize. One of the criticisms that was leveled at the bank at the time. August 2016 may be their most controversial move yet. That interest rate cut from 50 basis points to 25 basis points was met with a lot of backlash at the time because it was perceived to be political. The Bank of England justified it by saying they were doing a preemptive rate cut to ensure the economy kept ticking even post-Brexit. And you can see here, October 2016 was the first time that Carney's tenure got extended. Now, interestingly enough, only about a year later, the Bank of England actually reversed the cut post-referendum, and they hiked rates back from 25 basis points to 50 basis points, also guiding to limited and gradual rate hikes in the future. People assumed that that meant 2 to 3 hikes a year. Wasn't actually the case. It took them another year to hike to 75 basis points, and obviously rates have been there ever since. Some mixed signals on the economy, but recently the signs and the language coming out of various MPC members, including Mr. Carney himself, are a little bit more cautious on the outlook here. And the latest guidance suggests that they may be pointing towards maybe one last cut at tomorrow's press conference. So all eyes on that. But we do know that for Mr. Carney, his pet project is climate change. And after that, after he steps down, he will be going to be, working as a finance advisor for the UN Climate Change Conference in Glasgow once this conference.
So just look at this from the start here. GDP July 2013 here is up to $1.70. That peaked just after Carney got in. It was right at $1.60, and it just went down and down and down and all the way down to $1.20 way over here, and it climbed up a little bit and then just goes back down. Carney's a menace to whatever economy he's involved in. The Liberals can say all they want about his education. I mean, they've been attacking Pierre for these comments on his education. Pierre really didn't say much about his education. They just said he was poorly educated because the decisions he's making is having a bad effect on the economy. He's name dropped numerous things, whether it's the world event, interest, debt, all that stuff. They made it wholly on his education when really that wasn't the focus of what Pierre was stating. But I mean, look at the results here. That's what Pierre was pointing out. Carney's actions as the governor of the Bank of England have been devastating to this economy. And the other thing they didn't point out here is right at the end, Carney gets out at January 2020, mentions the C word change stuff going on here. Well, right at the end there, January 2020, Carney stepped down because there was this whole fiasco here, which came out with the Epstein files eventually, recently, where Carney was wrapped in with this whole Andrew Bailey, London Capital Finance, this whole collapse. And it's believed that there is alleged blackmail here between Epstein and Andrew Bailey, and alleged blackmail Parliament into appointing Lisa Osofsky, who's a director at the Serious Fraud Office, who refused to investigate a whole bunch of emails to Epstein. There's this whole thing that blew up, and Mark Carney resigns shortly after. And this is tied to a bunch of judges too. I have a whole video on this, but I mean, this nonsense here is interesting. The timing, you know, this whole thing blows up and like Carney's just, I'm out of here. And while he wasn't directly responsible for this, he was the governor of the Bank of England. This reflects poorly upon him too. But the fact that he just goes and resigns makes you wonder what we don't know. Jumping over to the House, we've got a bit of a spicy back and forth here between Melissa Lantsman and Tim Hodgson.
Spent the weekend repeating the same speech he's already given, and Canadians are still wondering when they'll see results. He has the power to greenlight major projects, build pipelines, but zero have been approved while keeping every anti-development law on the books. Over $1 trillion in net investment now gone from the country, and a year past his own deadline, no deal. Just fear and division without results. More speeches and more agreements to make agreements. No pipelines, no deal, no investment, no relief at the grocery store. When does the Prime Minister stop auditioning for the job that he already has?
Here. I'll help her get off clickbait and go through the province. $8 billion.
I'll help her get off of clickbait? Mark Carney said he would get a deal with Donald Trump. He said he was the guy who could handle Trump. He's not handling Trump, and now he's just saying it's dangerous and divided. We're not getting a deal with America. As she said, when does he stop auditioning for the job he has? He said he's going to get a deal. Where's the deal? Otherwise, he should be fired.
In Goose Bay, a new transmission line between Nova Scotia and Newfoundland, a new wind farm in Nova Scotia, a new port in Montreal, a new SMR in Ontario.
So he's giving a bunch of examples here of projects. Many of them, probably most of them, have already been announced before even Carney got in, have been in the works for years. I mean, he just mentioned a new SMR in Ontario. Let's break that one down, for example. What he's likely talking about here is this: Bruce Power and Sask Power signed Memorandum of Understanding to inform Saskatchewan Large Reactor Technology Assessment. So this was on April 15th, 5 days ago. Now, obviously, this isn't anything other than an MOU, but this likely will go forward because if we look who's involved in this, it'll be the same players that Bruce Power works with. For example, we've got this one here. You can see Bruce Power right on their own website. This is Unit 3 MRC construction phase completed. This is a major component replacement project, basically refurbishing this to keep it active. It even says it right here. Now shifts focus to returning the renewed unit to service in the coming months to power the province's homes, businesses, etc. Bruce Power worked with numerous companies, a bunch of them named here: Shoreline Power, Steam Generator Replacement Team, and BWXT, as in BWX Technologies, the same BWX Technologies that Mark Carney, by his own admission here, is BWX Technologies right there. This is already on his conflicts of interest list because it's a direct conflict of interest. He name dropped this company. If I can find it here, he has so many conflicts now. Right here, so BWX Technologies, these guys supply reactor components, nuclear fuel, all this stuff directly involved with this power generation in Ontario, and this is directly related and benefits Mark Carney's Brookfield Global Transition Fund 1, the number one company on here, Westinghouse. Mark Carney name dropped during the election, during the debate. So the more that Carney can push companies like this to be more successful, it boosts directly his Brookfield Global Transition Fund 1, because as this company grows in size, they get bigger market share. It boosts that entire sector in Canada. And we've seen just today, BWXT bolsters American nuclear manufacturing capabilities with strategic acquisition. So they have acquired a private company, Precision Components Group LLC. So they're making moves here, and they got big support from Mark Carney. So it's no surprise Tim Hodgson would name drop this. Likely this is what he was talking about, the SMR in Ontario. It's going to be this Memorandum of Understanding because this helps Mark Carney. Now just think, if we go through every single one of his examples, you're likely going to get either a boost to public image or you're going to get direct connections, financial connections to Mark Carney, generating more wealth. That's all he's doing here. He's not doing anything for us. If this benefits any Canadian, that is a side result, not intentional.
A new mine in Manitoba, multiple new mines in Saskatchewan, new CCUS in Alberta, a new pipeline in Alberta.
A new pipeline in Alberta. Yeah, I mean, all these examples are ridiculous. A new mine in Manitoba and 2 new mines. And just to break this down a little bit more here, all the projects that Tim Hodgson mentioned, I've taken these, put them on a list here of which ones I think he's talking about. Some of them, it's not clear. He mentioned Alberta Pipeline. They have a couple of tiny little pipelines. I think he's talking about one of those as a verse to the MOU with Daniel Smith and a big pipeline to the BC coast. But out of all these, we've got Goose Bay Transmission Line, new wind farm Nova Scotia, Port of Montreal expansion, SMR Ontario, new mine in Manitoba, Saskatchewan mines, CCUS Alberta, which is carbon capture, utilization, and storage, Alberta Pipeline, and KSI Lissam's LNG. This is LNG export terminal. And out of all of those, Tim Hodgson's bragging that Carney's doing, we've got only 3 of them have been announced since Carney's been Prime Minister. That's the Goose Bay project here. That's a massive $8 billion NORAD Arctic defense modernization. We've got a new wind farm in Nova Scotia, and we've got the potential Alberta Pipeline, depending which one it is. All the rest were announced way before Carney. As we see here, I've got the dates: October 2023, 2015, 2022. And this Manitoba mine here is the Minago project, which was bought by First Nations in 2024. So technically, this was just rebranded in 2026 on July 21st. So another project that Mark Carney had nothing to do with. Of course, they rebrand it. They stick their name on it. Carney puts his name on all these projects to try to make it seem like he's doing a bunch of stuff, but he's not. And as for the SMR, I have Darlington on here because Carney's already taken credit for that one, even though that started in 2020. But I showed you Bruce Power. Either or, it'd be one of those. If it is Bruce Power, then this is one that happened after Carney came in. But regardless, they're taking credit for as many of these projects as possible when they're not the ones starting them.
New LNG in BC. Maybe they should get out of the clickbait.
Maybe they should get out of the clickbait. Wow.
All of those things announced and not a single one of those things built. And I'll give him some new numbers from today. And the new numbers are in March, Canada had the worst food inflation in the G7. Not the second worst, but the worst. Every G7 country faces the same global factors, yet Canadians are paying more than all of them. After years of deficit spending and higher taxes, Canadians now lead the G7 in household debt, housing costs, and food inflation. When will the Prime Minister stop giving the fancy speeches and bring down the cost of government so Canadians can afford to live?
We acknowledge the challenges that we're seeing, Mr. Speaker, but what a great list. But I know it's Monday and the Conservative want more good news, Mr. Speaker. And I have a few of them, Mr. Speaker, coming out of Washington. The International Monetary Fund just said that Canada has the strongest fiscal position of the G7, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah, that's the same organization that recognizes Taiwan as a province of China, once again.
Strongest fiscal position. The second fastest growth in the G7, Mr. Speaker, almost twice as Germany and Japan. And good news, Mr. Speaker, our recruitment in the armed forces is an all-time high, Mr. Speaker. We'll build this country.
I don't believe a word out of his mouth. Are they using the metrics that they're bringing in all the office workers as secondary military? That's what the recruitment was, is bringing in all these people that work in government public service to fly drones and do whatever else and technically categorize them as military.
On display, the minister thinks that everything is going fine. But for everyone drawing a paycheck, feeding a family, or paying a mortgage, that reality is much different. Last month, the Prime Minister stood in this House and, quote, said, quote, affordability is the best it's been in over a decade. While we get the same speeches for 4 straight months in running, Canada has had the worst food inflation of all of our allies, and that too deserves a speech. On top of all of that, Canada has the highest household debt and the only shrinking economy in the G7. If affordability is the best it's been in a decade, then I have one question for him. For whom?
Mr. Speaker, while this government's been focused on giving Canadians a boost today and a bridge to tomorrow, you know what the opposition's been doing, Mr. Speaker? Sticking spokes in the wheels of Canadians, whether it's affordable childcare, building major projects, training.
Okay, this is just getting embarrassing. It takes 3 different ministers here to try to combat what Melissa Lantsman's saying, and none of them have anything. They just all keep spewing out lies as usual. With this talk of military, we've got this clip here posted by Wiretap Media. Bombshell James Bezin confirms that the CFA is recruiting immigrants who can't speak English or French. They wash out of basic training and then get housed in pop-up tent cities like a full-blown refugee camp. This is our military that is seeing record numbers coming in.
I'm hearing that at St. Jean right now, where we do all of our basic training, that there is a large number that are either voluntarily withdrawing or have failed to meet the standards. Some of them even on language. Some of the PRs are not functional in either French and or English. So based upon that, we're hearing that there's temporary shelters being built to house them. I thought that all of our forces that or all those that have gone through basic training or in basic training, whether they voluntarily withdraw or not, that they're paid to go home, not to be stored up in temporary housing like tents. And I'm hearing up to 13 units being built to house those that have not gotten through basic training.
What a disaster. Everything in our country is a disaster because of the Liberals.